Let's pray and we'll get started, okay? Thank you, Father, for another good day that you allowed us to be here together. Thank you for this group. And Lord, I pray that you would be here this morning in a special way, that you would help us to understand, help our ears to hear your word, to drown out the noise of everything else. And Lord, may your word be alive. Help us this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. We are embarking on the book of Revelation, and we got a long ways in last week, right? A couple words, something like that. All right. So I just want to give a really fast summary to get us up to speed as where we are in context, okay? So my little mouse thing died, so that'll be helpful today.
Yeah, you want to borrow it?
Well, actually what happened is the plug-in that goes into my computer busted in half on my way out the door, and it worked just fine until right now. So imagine how that all happens. All right, so we'll stumble a little bit with that. We'll be all right. Okay, the book of Revelation, we're in 95 AD. We said last week there's some people that think that Revelation was written in the 60s AD. That would be a minority opinion. There's fairly good documentation that tells us that it's in this 95 AD period, okay? John was an apostle. He was one of the 12. He gets exiled onto Camp Patmos by this guy, which is Emperor Domitian of Rome, okay? And we showed you last week that just to get you in the right part of the earth, that Jerusalem is over here, Rome is up here, modern day Turkey in this area, and the little island of Patmos right off of the shore there, okay? We zoom in a little bit. Patmos is down here, and you would recognize the name Ephesus, right, as one of the churches that we're going to talk about. And in terms of John's death, he probably died in Ephesus, but there's not like really strong documentation on that, but that's what we think, okay? All right. And I'll just give you one more picture here as we zoom in a little farther. This is modern day island of Patmos, okay? It's about 13 square miles of island, so it's not a little tiny island, but it's also not that big. And we said last week that it is, or was at that time, basically a rock quarry. And so that was, we would say, like today we have Alcatraz, put the prisoners on the island, they're probably not going away, and if they do, they're going into the belly of a shark, so we don't have to worry about people escaping. This was what was going on then. They're on the island of Patmos, they're prisoners, they're not there because they want to be, and they get to chip rocks and carry rocks in buckets. They were human quarry dudes, okay? And so, again, why do I tell you all this? I want us to get context to who John is. And again, we talked about James and John being the sons of Zebedee. And then when we say those words, if you're a New Testament scholar, it'll kick right in that if you were a son of Zebedee, you were a son of thunder, right? So sometimes in Sunday school, we get dismissive about who these people are. They're real people, okay? And when I go back and look at the life of John, John is a man's man. He is a tough dude. And whenever people want to say that the gospel is weak, I think we need to point them back to these real people and say, oh, really? How weak of a guy are you? Would you have done this, and this? You know, would you have stood up for your faith and hung upside down on a cross and not deny Christ like Peter did? Right? Okay. So again, I kind of got derailed there, and I'm a little fired up today, so if I get off the rails. I'm just going to apologize in advance, okay? Because of the week that we had, I have some conviction about some things. So, prepare yourself. What else is going on? Oh, that there's about 3,000 people that live on the island of Patmos today, okay, current times. And it seems like, it's probably a vacation place. I'm just telling you it wasn't a vacation place then, okay? All right, a little more historical background in terms of context. Christ came to earth, he did his ministry, he died, he ascended to heaven. That put us in around 33 AD, right? Okay? And then we have the apostles. They went on to spread the gospel. But by the time we get to John, how many apostles are alive? One. And that would be John. Okay? I'm telling you, John's a tough dude. Like you try to take me out, but I'm not going to have it, right? There is some historical stories that say that they actually tried to cook John in a vat of oil to kill him and it didn't work. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes for a good story. And especially if I'm saying he's tough, I mean I would not want to be tested in that lane, right? I'm probably not that tough, I'll admit that. All right. And we just got out of Romans, and Romans was written by Paul. Paul died in around 68 AD, so Paul's already gone as well. By the way, how did Paul die? Paul was beheaded. Why was he beheaded? Peter and him died about the same time period, probably even in the same year. Peter was crucified upside down. Why wasn't Paul crucified? Trivia question. Because Paul was a Roman citizen, and you wouldn't do that to a real human being, but anybody else, it was okay. Wild stuff, right? And again, I tell you this because I want us to get our heads in the context of what people thought. Number one, what was John thinking when Christ shows up and reveals all this stuff to him? Like, all this is fresh in his mind, okay? And the people that are going to get this book immediately following this revelation, what was going on in their heads? I want us to get context there. So that's why I'm driving this point home, okay? And before 95 AD, we had something called 70 AD, right? Okay, what was 70 AD about? The Romans came in, and what did they do to Jerusalem? They got rid of it, which is crazy because they didn't build out of sticks and 2x4s, Josh. They built out of stone. And so if you didn't like the way something looked, like, well, I was going to make a living room joke about a couch, and if it was made out of stone, we'd be sort of going back to the Fred Flintstone cartoons, if you can relate to that. But they didn't build out of wood. They built out of rock. So things didn't change quickly there, and they would just keep building on top of things, right? Okay, so in context, this is only 25 years after Rome had come in and took out Jerusalem. Did Rome do that because they were bored? No. They did it because the Jews were rebellious, stubborn, antagonistic, guerrilla warfare people. And some of those words should reminisce with what we just came out of Romans with, right? Okay, so again, it's easy to be biblical and spiritual because we're sitting in Sunday school. I'm telling you, these were real people, and they were really stubborn. And so we're going to see some of that today about stubbornness of people. It showed up in real life because here's this little country called Israel, and they're constantly raising their fist to Rome. Who was Rome at the time? Rome was the world empire leader. They did what they wanted. They had conquered the known world. And what do you think no offense to people that have little dogs, okay? But when a little dog comes tearing up to you and yap, 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 like it's going to kill you, what is the natural response? I'm not really too concerned about it. But if you bite me, then there might be a problem, right? Okay, so this is the relationship that Israel has to Rome. Okay, again, context. So we had 70 AD happen, which was terrible, and how many Jews died? Million, right? I would call that a bad time. Put that in the context of the book of Revelation as we go forward, okay? They were used to having a bad time. And then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because there was a couple other conflicts that in history are a bigger deal. 115 to 117 AD. So we're 20 years after the book is written, okay? And the Jews get after Rome again. And there's a problem with the Jews were taxed out of humiliation because they were Jewish. They got this special Jew tax. That didn't go over so hot. So that was called the Diaspora Revolt or the Kittos War, if you are interested in looking any of that up. 1.3 million Jews were killed. So we took out 1 million. We went 20 some years. And we took out another 1.3 million. Just think back into the Old Testament. The Jews would populate, and then what would happen? They'd get clobbered. And they would populate, and they'd get clobbered. And then we had 70 AD, and they got clobbered. And then we have this Kittos War, and they get clobbered again. And then we go ahead to about 132 to 136 AD. And this one was called the Bar Kokhba Revolt. And we'll probably get into this later, but again, more guerrilla warfare is going on. There was a couple other countries, I think, now don't quote me on this, I'm going off the top of my head. I think this was from Egypt and Syria, I think. And they were meeting in the land of Israel to beat each other up. And then they got mad because the Jews were sort of in the way. And so then they went after them. There is something called the Cave of Horrors that was actually found in 1953, but they didn't open it up till 61. And this is in the same general location that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. The interesting part is that, you know, in the course of a couple thousand years, 1961 isn't that far ago, right? Most of us, well, I wasn't born yet, just to be fair, but some of you were old, and some of you had been born then, right? Okay? So, the Cave of Horrors, when they opened that up, and they crawled inside this cave, they found 40 skeletons of people who were not killed and put in the cave. They went in the cave to hide, and they just didn't come out. So they say, and this is adults and children both, they stayed in there and until they starved to death or with lack of water, they died in the caves. So that is a real place. It really happened, and we really found it not that long ago. And again, it was around the time of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So in the place of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the physical place of, which again, we have archaeologically found a bunch of that stuff as of late. All super interesting. All again tells me, hey, my Bible is real, my Bible is true. I don't have to doubt it. We have all this historical, geological, I was going to say architectural, but I guess that too, and archaeological stuff to prove it. So, okay. Have the Jews been accustomed to a bad time? Yes. Okay. And so when we read Revelation and there's a bunch of things called a bad time going on in there, you can never get used to it, but they're like used to it. Okay. Which we're not. Okay. We're spoiled people. We're spoiled children. We're spoiled brats. Life is good. Do we have hard things going on in our lives? Yes. But in the context of all history, life is really good for us, okay? All right. I forgot about the Mossad War. We've had pictures of Masada up here, which absolutely fantastic place to visit. Well, I was overwhelmed by how impressive that place is and the history that it was. That was 73 AD. Again, 20 years after that is when this book is written, okay? All right. I think we talked about this for a second last week, but just that there's going to be three eschatological ways to read Revelation. And so depending on how you read that, you're going to see these words differently. One, if you think about that book being all allegorical or symbolic, you're going to see things differently. If we look at it historical, in other words, all of it has already been done, we would call that preterism, you're going to see things differently. If you think of it literally, or also we would call it futuristic, meaning it's going to happen sometime in the future, we're going to see the words a little bit differently, okay? And those differences lead to really fun discussions, and so we'll probably have some of those as we move forward, okay? All right. Chapter 1, Revelation, okay? We talked about, well, let's go there for 1 minute. And I promise you we are somehow going to get through this book. But as we go into it and as we stumble across or cross paths with things that are deriven or referenced out of the Old Testament, I'm going to be forced to go back to the Old Testament to show it as a reference. And I hope, for me personally, it makes it deeper. That we're gonna go down some rabbit holes, and I hope that is fun, enjoyable, confusing, but overall deeper. I want to go to the deep end of the pool, not because I want to drown, but because I think there's an adventure there. Okay, and I don't know that, and that's not normal. Okay, when people study Revelation as an overall statement, I don't think we do that, and so I want to be different because I'm different. Okay, all right. Revelation 1, the revelation from Jesus Christ, and we stopped at the word revelation, and we said that revelation actually meant what? That the word was apocalypsis, and then what did that word mean? It meant the unveiling, the disclosure, the revealing from God and King Jesus. This book is dedicated to Christ, it is about Christ, and it was written for the glory of Christ. And if we get nothing else out of this book, keep that theme in your head, okay? All right. It is a book that by its very name, the name Revelation, is that it's supposed to be understood. It is revealing something, okay? So as we think about Revelation in a quick, like if somebody says, hey, let's go study Revelation, immediately we think, maybe not. Why? Because it's hard to understand. And yet the book's name literally says, hey, we're going to open up some things, and we're pulling back the curtain. So let's go behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz and see what's back there. It's going to be way deeper than the Wizard of Oz, okay? All right. The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. When we say the revelation of Jesus Christ to show his servants what must soon take place, for those of us who were in Sunday school and went through Daniel, that should tickle your ears a little bit, because those same words were given to Daniel. And so let's go quickly back there. Let's go to Daniel 2. We're going to tie some things together here. Daniel 2, verse 28. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. Just catch that word reveals, okay? He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Just sorry for context, I should have said, hey, we're going to Daniel. This is about Daniel. Just remember your Sunday school stories about Daniel, and Daniel has to explain his vision to the king, right? Okay? Your dream and the visions that pass through your mind as you were lying in bed are these. And then we think back to Revelation, and there was this revealing of vision. Okay, so we're tying it together. 29. As your majesty was lying there, your mind turned to things to come. Prophetic, right? Things to come. Same as Revelation, things to come. And the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. Who's the revealer of mysteries? The one and only. Okay? The one and only deity that can tell you what's going to happen before it happens. Right? Okay. And then go to Daniel 9:24. If we go to Daniel 9:24 through 27, 77s are decreed for your people in your holy city, Jerusalem, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophesy, and to anoint the most holy place. Know and understand this, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one. Who's the anointed one? Sorry. Jesus, right? Okay? And just to get us into context even more, we're talking about what they call the 69 weeks, and we're going to get to the 70th week. And so, again, we're back in Daniel. It is prophesying about things to come in the future, and so is Revelation. Okay? And if you remember, when we got into this 69-week part, and we broke it down by all of the prophecies that were given to Daniel, it took us an hour just to go through the specific prophecies that have happened in that 69 weeks, to the point of God telling us who rulers were, where the kingdoms were, all of that stuff, okay? All right. The ruler comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death. Was Christ put to death? Yes. And will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And when did that happen? 70 AD. Okay. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. In other words, the cup of wrath. Okay, we're just tying Daniel in with Revelation. Okay? All right. Now, Daniel is talking about the exile that they're in, okay, and giving the people hope that there is going to be a chance for Israel to regain itself, for the people to go back to the land. So Daniel was given to the people in the Babylonian exile to give them hope, right? The book of Revelation is given to a people who need hope. And that would have been the people in 95 AD. It would be the people in 2025 AD. Okay? All right. I promise you it's going to be helpful if we keep pulling in the Old Testament, but it is going to drag us down in terms of speed here, okay? In terms of the Jewish custom, there is this prophetic commissioning that happens. And from their standpoint, this sounds a lot to them. In other words, because their point of reference would have been the Old Testament, right? They didn't have the New Testament primarily yet. The Gospels are starting to hit the street, but their background is the Old Testament, right? Okay, so in context, they're going to go back to Ezekiel, and we're going to go back and just cruise through Ezekiel 1 through 3. We're not going to do the whole book of Ezekiel to get to verse 2 of Revelation, even though it might feel like that for a minute, okay? So let's go back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 1. All right. We go back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel is a prophet. He was a prophet to the northern kingdoms, which should ring a bell because we just got out of Romans and we talked about the northern and southern kingdoms, right? Okay. He was also a captive, or he was taken captive and sent to the Babylonian Empire. Who else did we just say was there? Daniel. Okay? So we're in that 593 to 571 BC period, and Ezekiel is in the second group of Jews that were sent off to the Babylonian Empire. All right? Just for context. Let me get you a different slide. Okay. So, again, just to get us on the right path here, Jerusalem is here, and they're going to be taken over into this area right here. This little Tel Aviv name is going to come up. Babylonian is right here. And the Kebar River is going to come up here as we get started, okay? If we go in just a little bit, this is pointing to the area of the Jewish settlements, and the Kebar Canal is that red line in there, okay? And the Tel Aviv name actually is very, very close to this Nippur city now. Just, again, so that we have some context of where in the world. A real place, real people, real time really happened, okay? All right, so I know you all want to be impressed by this river, and this was the first one that I found, and you're like, ooh, man, that's fun. All right, I know you love that one, but I jumped ahead. Okay, so that looks a little bit more like a river to you and I, okay? But they're in the floodplain, the Euphrates, and so if they would have a flood, this thing would fan out. We would say they were in the flood zone, okay? All right. Ezekiel 1 through 3 introduces us to the prophetic ministry of Ezekiel. Who is Ezekiel? He's a priest. He's in the Levite line. He's a priest. He is about 30 years old when he gets this vision from God. Why is that important? In Jewish culture, if you were going to be a priest, your priesthood time actually would start when you were about 30 years old. Why is that fun? It's fun to me because how old was Jesus Christ when his ministry started? And Jesus called himself the high priest. Okay? Just showing the connection of the Jewish culture there. All right? Also, the name Ezekiel actually means God will strengthen. So we just said, talking about encouraging the people, we need to be encouraged today as well. I think it's fun when God lines up names that encourage us, or in this case, God strengthens, and that will become a little more important as we get into this in just a couple of minutes, okay? All right. I want us to read chapter 1 through 3. I know it's a lot of reading. We're going to stop and start a little bit, but I'll try and go quickly. There's just a bunch of things in here that I want to tie into the book of Revelation, okay? In my 30th year, there he is, 30 years old, in the 4th month, on the 5th day, while I was among the exiles by the Kebar River. This is like in July, I believe, okay? The heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. Okay, just a quick note on that. Does it say that Ezekiel fell asleep and was having a dream and had a vision? No. I would take it to mean, hey, I'm hanging out at the river. Maybe there's a fish or two. Maybe I got a hook on a line, seeing what's going on in the river. If I'm Josh or Paul, I'm trying to catch a fish. And then what happens? He looks up, and the heavens open. So he's awake. What's wild is that he's not alone. It doesn't say other people saw it, but he actually is seeing it with his eyes, right? And as we started last week talking about how John is trying to describe things that he sees going forward in the book of Revelation, Ezekiel is going to try and describe things that aren't going to make a lot of sense to him. And I would say are things that he's never seen before. Okay? How hard is that? If you've never ever seen something that is just so bizarre that it blows your mind, and then they're like, okay, well, tell me what you saw. I'm not really sure. I mean, if you're a hunter and you're out in the woods and something goes cruising through the woods and you go, well, what was it? I'm not really sure. It looked like this, or it looked like that, right? So that's what we're going to get here. He's literally going to say, it looked like. So we're getting descriptions. Let's keep going. On the 5th of the month, it was the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim. The word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, by the Kebar River in the land of Babylonians. There the hand of the Lord was on him. We talked about the right hand and the left hand a couple weeks ago, the blessing, right? And a little bit later on here, it's going to say the mighty hand of the Lord was on him. Okay? I looked and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like, there he is, looked like glowing metal. And in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human. And I think I showed you this last time. Again, this is not scriptural. This is somebody's idea of what maybe something maybe look like, but as we piece the descriptions together, these things are in here. And again, how hard is it to describe something you've never seen before? Okay, so let's be gracious. When you look at that and go, well, Rick, I don't think it looked like that. Awesome. You come up with your own picture. It'll be fine, okay? All right. But each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight. Their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on the 4 sides, they had human hands. All 4 of them had faces and wings, and the wings of one touched the wings of the other. Each one went straight ahead, and they did not turn as they moved. These are angels. It tells us later in Ezekiel that they are, so we don't have to guess. But these are angels, and he's describing the glory of God all mixed together. All right? That's going to be difficult. So it's fine if this is difficult. All right? We're just getting a description. Their faces looked like this. Each of the 4 had the face of a human being, and on the right side, each had the face of a lion. And on the left, the face of an ox. Each also had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. They each had 2 wings spreading out upward, each wing touching that of the creature on either side, and each had 2 other wings covering its body. Each one went straight ahead. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, without turning as they went. The appearance of the living creatures was like burning coals of fire, or like torches. Fire moved back and forth among the creatures. It was bright, and lightning flashed out of it. The creatures sped back and forth like flashes of lightning. Okay, stop for a second. I was like, I wonder how fast lightning is. Anybody ever ask yourself that? Or it's just Rick? Well, I'm glad you asked the question. Lightning travels at 670 million miles an hour. And if I'm like, okay, well, how fast really is that? Well, if we break down the math, and I got to just get back to my notes, it's 186,000 miles per second. Yeah, but how fast is that? You could travel the Earth 7.44 times in 1 second. I think that's pretty cool. Angels can go around the Earth 7.5 times per second. If they are ordered by God to go somewhere, how long does it take to get there? Not super long, okay? And if they're really tough, and they are, and they're protectors, and they are, like that should give us a little sense of security, right? I think I've told you guys this story, it just popped into my head. Years ago, I'm in Longville, I'm traveling south on County 54, and I'm down by Little Boy Lake, and I come around a curve, and a logging truck is coming at me. And I'm in my 1-ton truck with a big enclosed trailer. It's in the wintertime. Somebody's froze up, and I'm going to unthaw them. As we come around the corner, just as we're about to meet each other, one of the logs comes off the logging truck. I see it come off the logging truck. It goes over the top of my truck, over the trailer, and boom, on the ground. Now, I can just tell you that gravity does things, okay? What gravity does is it makes things go down. If it's up, it makes it come down. I can tell you that what that did is it went horizontal for a while. Now, you take this any way you want. Immediately, I was like, that was cool. And now I'm looking at this and I'm going, there could have been an angel in Africa, and God said, hey, do me a favor and get Rick out of trouble right now. Boom! And he, done. This makes more sense to me now, because he could have went 7.5 times around the world while the log was in the air. Because I promise you, it was in the air longer than a second. That is cool. God is good to us. And it doesn't always have to make sense. This actually makes a little more sense to me now. So, all right. I'm glad that popped in my head. It sort of tickled me this morning, even if you're bored. Okay? All right. What verse was I on? I was on 14. All right. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. Okay, just as we get into this is going to be particularly important for guys. Okay? Let's keep going. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They are sparkled with like topaz, and all 4 look alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. And I had to write in my Bible, sweet rims. Do guys like big, tall rims? Come on! Tim's got big, sweet rims on his truck. Go out and look after church. I promise you, you will like them. Only the girls are like, get whatever. Tall, sweet rims. Okay, I like that. Let's keep going. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved, and when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. And when the creatures moved, they also moved. When the creatures stood still, they also stood still. And when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels rose along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. And commentaries would say that the eyeballs would be symbolic of seeing and also being everywhere. And when we take the speed of lightning and we put it on with the eyes being able to see things, pretty sure God's got us covered. If his angels can go that fast, I think that God's faster. Okay? All right. Spread out above the heads of the living creatures was what looked like a vault, sparkling like crystal and awesome. Under the vault, their wings were stretched out one toward the other, and each had 2 wings covering its body. When the creatures moved, I heard the sounds of their wings, like the roar of rushing waters, like the voice of the Almighty, like the tumult of an army. When they stood still, they lowered their wings. As a guy, and I go back and I think about sweet rims attached to sweet tires, going down a sweet road in a sweet big truck, I can hear noise. Do you guys with me? Just the guys are nodding their heads. It's a sweet noise. Now put that on steroids times 1 billion, right? And then mix in this noise of a marching army. Has anybody ever heard a marching army? Paul's done a little marching because he had to, and I'm sure he highly enjoyed it. But part of that little kid in you is digging it, right? When you're like boom, 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 and you're on a team, a big team, and you're going in a certain direction, and it's making this noise, and it kind of fills you up inside, and you feel a little tougher, right? Is anybody else following me here? I think this is fantastic. Girls, we'll get something fun for you in a little bit, okay? All right. And then there came a voice from above the vault over their heads as they stood with lowered wings. Above the vault, over their heads, was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli. What is that? Does anybody care?
Yeah.
For you jewelry people. Lapis lazuli. If you want to go back and look at some pictures, it's actually pretty cool. And not only do they make really fun jewelry out of it, but some of it has like this really bright gold chunks inside of it, which is super fun, especially if you like jewelry, and I know a couple people in the room that do. So that word actually means blue. That's helpful. Now I know what color it is, okay? And high above on the throne was a figure like that of a man. I saw that from what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like glowing metal. Think back to Daniel and the appearance of Christ and see if some of this doesn't seem similar, okay? As it is full of fire, and that from there down he looked like fire, and brilliant lights surrounded him. Like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the radiance around him. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. He's trying to describe the glory of the Lord. Who wants to volunteer for that position? Not me, right? But he's doing the best he can. And the other thing that's really cool about this is read the next part of the verse. When I saw it, I fell face down, and I heard the voice of one speaking. What was the reaction to Daniel when Christ showed up? In the glory of the Lord, just a little bit. What happened to him? Boom, he's on the ground. So, sometimes you'll have a confrontation with someone who will say, I'll do what I want. God is not in charge of me. And you would say in your Sunday school response, hey, at some point, every knee will bow. And they're like, not me. I'm too tough. What's going to happen when the glory of God shows up on these people? They're going to get in the dirt. And again, we've talked about unconscious behavior that happens when you get hit with something. And I use the explosion story, but Daniel hit the dirt. Ezekiel hits the dirt. What are people going to do when they get confronted with Jesus Christ? We're going to hit the dirt, right? I'm getting way ahead of myself, but in the week that we just had, I'm telling you, Jesus Christ is king. And when the king shows up, people are going to hit the dirt. And people are out and about this week, and they're making fun of terrible things. And they're saying, I'll do what I want. There is going to come a time when they're going to hit the dirt. And so because of that, we should live differently. And now I'm getting way ahead of myself because fear gets into us immediately when bad things like that happen, and they say, oof, that would never happen if he would have been more careful, not so outspoken. He didn't have to go talk to people who didn't think like him. He didn't have to say things out loud to people who were going to disagree with him. And if he hadn't have done that, he'd still be alive. Is that the right response? Who's our king? Our king is this God that was just described, that when he shows up, people hit the dirt. And it is terrible. We had a terrible week. But who's still in charge? Jesus Christ. Okay? All right, now I got to stop, get on the rails, and then we'll get to more of that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I already am. All right. We are in chapter 2 now, okay? He said to me, Son of man, stand up on your feet, and I will speak to you. Why does he tell him to stand up? Because someone put him in the dirt. Right? Has anybody ever been put in the dirt? I got a couple hands. What is that feeling? When you're like standing here doing your thing. Some of you were probably wrestling. Some of you were fighting. Some of us just tripped over stupid stuff. What happens? What's that feeling? Humility. Nobody would say anything. Finally, Jesse's like, oh, it was a good time. No, it wasn't a good time, right? You had this helpless thought that goes through your head, right? All right. So, tells him to stand up. As he spoke, the Spirit came into me and raised me to my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. Who lifted him up?
Spirit.
Okay. Is the Spirit strong? Yes. Hang on to that thought. We're going to tie that in a little bit more as we go ahead. He said, Son of man, I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been in revolt against me to this very day. The people to whom I am sending you are obstinate and stubborn. Is that anybody having like flashbacks to Romans? We talked about the clay and the potter and the clay. And what is clay? Stubborn. We're in 600 BC. Romans is written from Paul's time, right? Which is AD. And so what has been happening for 600 years? The people have been stubborn. And what has happened from Christ's death and resurrection to today? People have been stubborn. Why? Because we're like clay. And what does clay do? Clay does what it wants. Okay? Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. And whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are rebellious people, they will know that a prophet has been among them. Did it say, listen, they're all going to be nice to you, and I want you to go tell them, and I want you to tickle their ears, and then you can sing Kumbaya like in summer camp? Is that what's going to happen? No. What is our job? What was his job? Ezekiel's job was to go sow seeds, right? What is our job today? To go sow seeds, okay? And whose responsibility is the response? Not yours. If you take that burden off yourself, it is very freeing, okay? It is not our responsibility, except that we have to go sow seeds. Now go back to what happened this week. Was Charlie Kirk sowing seeds? Did he get a good response? From a lot of people, he did. And from a lot of people, he didn't. And whose job was it once the seed was sown? Not his. Right? Okay. We need to keep that in mind going forward. Because our natural response for this, some of our natural responses, is to do less. It's God's problem, not mine. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to tell people because I don't want anything bad to happen to me. Is that what he told Ezekiel? Don't worry about the response. Go get it. And he's going to dig into this even more now, okay? They will know that a prophet has been among them. Just a side note. If you're a person of faith, meaning specifically, if Jesus Christ is your king, do people know that? It said here that they will know that a prophet has been among them. Will people know that Jesus Christ is your king if you have been among them? I think that's our challenge today, right? Okay? Regardless of the response. And you, son of man, do not be afraid. Okay, I've been fired up all morning to get to this spot. And you, son of man, do not be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Do not be afraid of what they say or be terrified by them. Okay, it's 2025. What's our response going to be to this week? We need to go back and look at this one more time. Do not be afraid of them or their words. Does that relate to 2025? Yes. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you. Okay, some little symbolism here. God's not asking you to go to the garden and jump in the weeds and thorns. But if there's bad stuff around us, what's our response? Do not be afraid. Okay? You live among scorpions. Well, do we live among scorpions in Minnesota? No. If you're down south, yes. Do you want to go play with scorpions? No. If we relate the symbolism of that, do we want to go to people who are going to hurt us, who are going to make threats against us, who are going to call us names? And the natural response is no. And what does God say? Do not be afraid. Okay? Do not be afraid of what they say or be terrified by them, though they are a rebellious people. You must speak my words to them. Does it say, well, I know you're in 2025, so I think you should consider speaking to them if it feels right to you? Pretty much the opposite, okay? Whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are rebellious. But you, son of man, listen to what I say to you. Do not rebel like that rebellious people. Open your mouth and eat what I give you. And then I looked and I saw a hand stretched out to me, and it was a scroll. All right, as soon as the word scroll comes into mind, now we think again of Revelation and a scroll that shows up, right? Okay, and even what he asks the prophet or the person who saw the vision, what are they going to do with it in both cases? They're going to eat it. Does eating a scroll seem like a good time? No, not unless it's a Hostess rolled up scroll with chocolate in it, okay? All right? On both sides of it were written words of lament and mourning and woe. And he said to me, Son of man, eat what is before you, eat this scroll. Then go and speak to the people of Israel. So, he's asking Ezekiel to internalize God, internalize this command that he's been given, and go. All right? And so I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. And then he said to me, Son of man, eat this scroll I am giving you, and fill your stomach with it. Fill yourself with the Word of God, and then don't be afraid, and then go tell somebody. Is that pretty straightforward? And by the way, he says, I command you to do it. All right. So I ate it, and I tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. And he then said to me, Son of man, go now to the people of Israel and speak my words to them. You are not being sent to a people of obscure speech and strange language, but to the people of Israel. You have no excuse. You know how to talk to them. You grew up with them. You're of the same race, the same culture. You understand how they think. Go and tell them. I'm not asking you to go to another part of the world where you can't do any of this. Man, okay. Where are we? We're in northern Minnesota. What language do we speak? English, most of us. God says, I'm not asking you to go to the other part of the world. I'm asking you to what? Tell the people that you can talk to like a normal person. Fill yourself up with the Word and go tell somebody. Okay? Not to many people of obscure speech and strange languages whose words you cannot understand. Surely if I had sent you to them, they would have listened to you. There's another little slap about the Jews at the time, of Israel at the time. But the people of Israel are not willing to listen to you because they're not willing to listen to me. For all the Israelites are hardened and obstinate, but I will make you as unyielding and hardened as they are. All right. How does God fight people who are stubborn? He builds somebody up that's more stubborn and says, go to it. Get after it. Now, some of you make jokes about being German and you're stubborn, or you're Irish and you're fiery. And so if God says, hey, go do it. And you're like, yeah, but these people won't listen. How about if I make you more stubborn than them and then you go do it? Very practical, right? Okay, so how's he going to do this? I will make your forehead like the hardest stone, harder than flint. Has anybody ever been accused of having a hard head? I mean, you got to laugh at some of this because it's true. And some of us are hard-headed. And so the practicality of going and talking to people who are hard-headed is to what? Send someone who is more hard-headed. Now, has anybody in this room ever been accused of being hard-headed? Just raise your hand. Would you indulge me? About half of you? Is that it? Not the other half? You're too sweet for that? Okay, so here's the deal. If you raised your hand, God said, awesome, I made you that way, and I'm going to make you so stubborn that you can go talk to stubborn people. Now the monkey is on your back. If you've called yourself stubborn, you got a job to do with no excuses. Okay? All right. Do not be afraid of them or terrified. There's do not be afraid again. Or terrified by them, though they are rebellious people. And he said to me, Son of man, listen carefully and take to heart all the words I speak to you. Go now to your people in exile and speak to them and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, whether they listen or they fail to listen. Then the Spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me a loud rumbling sound as the glory of the Lord. There's those big sweet rims and tires rolling again. From the place where it was standing, it was the sound of the wings of the living creatures brushing against each other, and the sound of the wheels beside them. A loud rumbling sound. The Spirit then lifted me up and took me away, and I went, this is interesting, I went in bitterness and anger. Do we normally talk about that in Sunday school as being an attribute? Not usually. But is there a reason here that we need to be fired up sometimes? Do we have to be happy about what just happened this last week? Is it okay to be angry? Are we going to use that anger as motivation, right? Are we going to use it as motivation? He's using that as motivation here. I got up and I went in bitterness and in the anger of my spirit with the strong hand of the Lord. You're not alone. God's like, I'm going to lift you up and I'm going to carry you, and my strong hand will take you there. Right? And we talked about the right hand a couple weeks ago, right? And so if God could have a weak hand, he did not use it here. He used his right hand. Okay? I came to the exiles who lived at Tel Aviv near the Kebar River. And I showed you that already. Where they were living, I sat among them for 7 days, deeply distressed. At the end of the 7 days, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel. What does that mean? What is a watchman? I'm going to show you a watchtower. And if anybody's been in the military, when you get put on watch, does that mean go watch TV? No. What is the purpose of a watchman? To warn, right? To pick up on incoming anything that doesn't belong there and to tell somebody, right? So that's Ezekiel's job. I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel, so hear the word I speak and give them warning for me. That's the job, to warn. And when I say to a wicked person, you will surely die, and you do not warn them or speak out to dissuade them from their evil ways, or in order to save their lives, that wicked person will die for their sin, and I will hold you accountable. Do we really think about that in terms of our witness to other people? If God, in his story with you, has you interact with other people, and we miss opportunities, that's a problem. There's some responsibility there that I don't think we probably internalize or live with daily. Here's a reminder, okay? I will hold you accountable for their blood, but if you do warn that wicked person, and they do not turn from their wickedness or from their evil ways, they will die for their sin, but you will have saved yourself. It is not our job except to sow seeds. And whether it grows, that seed grows, is not up to us, okay? Again, when a righteous person turns from their righteousness and does evil, I put a stumbling block before them. They will die. Since you did not warn them, they will die for their sins. The righteous things that person did will not be remembered, and I will hold you accountable for their blood. But if you do warn the righteous person not to sin, and they do not sin, they will surely live because they took warning, and you will have saved yourself. The hand of the Lord was on me there, and he said to me, get up and go out to the plain, and there I will speak to you. And so I got up, went out to the plain, and the glory of the Lord was standing there, like the glory I had seen, by the Kebar River, and I fell face down. There he is again. He's already had this interaction. He already knows the glory of God. He should be used to it. He shouldn't be surprised. But what's the reaction? He's on his face. I didn't realize that I had burned an hour already. Okay, we were almost ready to go back to Revelation where we started today. We're going to get there next week. Thank you. Let's pray real quick. Father, thank you for your goodness, for your powerful right hand. Lord, for the Spirit that lives in each one of us because you are our King. Lord, make us strong this week. Make us a strong witness for you. Help us to stand up straight and walk forward and do what you want us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.